In the quiet hills of western Pennsylvania, there are some old church objects that no one can really explain. In 17 different churches from Philadelphia to little towns on the edge of the frontier, there are fancy containers holding tiny bones and dried pieces of skin. No one really knows where they came from, and it seems like someone wanted to keep it that way. Between 1745 and 1792, more than 73 people just disappeared from these areas. Good folks, and sadly, even orphan kids. Later, local church leaders said these people were saints. But not many know about a sealed document at the Philadelphia Historical Society with stories from 3 people who saw the truth. They said the Whitmore family had a workshop where they turned real human bodies into holy church objects. The churches begged to keep it secret for hundreds of years, and that paper was locked away. But after digging deep, I found out what really happened, and it's worse than anyone thought. Before we go on with the awful story of what the Whitmore family really did, go ahead and subscribe if you want to hear creepy history most people won't touch. Tell me in the comments which state you're watching from. Maybe your local church has secrets too. Let's dive into this dark story from American church history. What happened in those Pennsylvania woods is way worse than what you'll find in history books. And the people who go to those churches today probably don't even know it. Back in the mid-1700s, Pennsylvania was a special place for religion. The Quakers were the main group in Philly and nearby towns, with simple buildings and quiet prayers. But out west, there were all kinds of Protestant churches, Presbyterians, Lutherans, and other smaller groups. They built little wooden churches while moving into land taken from native people. The Whitmore family came from England in 1742 and settled in Chester County, about 30 miles west of Philadelphia. The land was full of rolling hills, thick woods, and little farms. Nathaniel Whitmore had a serious face, sharp gray eyes, and a short beard around his long chin. He told people he made fancy church stuff, shiny cups, communion plates, and Bible covers. His work was beautiful, and rich churches really liked it. His shop was a big wooden building with 2 floors and big windows that let in sunlight. Church leaders often came by to order his pretty things. His wife Elizabeth was thin, always calm, and very organized. Neighbors thought she was kind of cold, but admired how she ran her house and kids. They had 4 children, and they all went to Harmony Meeting House, a small Quaker church. They sat quietly, sometimes speaking in service, and people thought they were very wise. The oldest son, Thomas, helped his dad in the workshop. Mary and Sarah, the daughters, stayed home to help their mom. Youngest was William, a sickly boy with intense eyes. He liked wandering in the woods, bringing home plants and little animals he'd save in jars. His parents thought this was smart and said it was for science. Life in Chester County was hard, with cold winters, bad crops sometimes, and scary times. On the frontier. But churches were growing fast, and people were very focused on God. The Great Awakening had spread big feelings about faith all over. Churches wanted to stand out with good teachings, and really nice-looking buildings and church tools. The Whitmore family was perfect for this. Nathaniel's work was better than anyone else's. By 1745, his business grew, and he had 2 helpers now. Jacob Miller, an orphan whose parents were German, and Peter Collins, a shy boy from a poor Philly family. The family lived well, but didn't show off. People said they were hardworking and religious. But behind the locked doors of that sunny workshop, something awful was going on. It all began one late fall evening in 1745, when Mary Collins vanished. She was a Quaker woman known for helping poor people feel better. She was walking home after visiting a sick family out on the edge of the county. People were sad, but they just thought maybe wild animals or native attacks got her, like what happened sometimes back then. But no one knew that Mary Collins was the first in a terrible plan that would go on for 50 years. On November 17th, 1745, A snowstorm was coming, and Mary was walking on a path near the Whitmore property. The sky was dark, and cold wind blew leaves around the frozen ground. Mary was 43, had gray in her hair, and rough hands from helping others for so long. She pulled her warm cloak tight and walked faster as she saw the lantern light from the Whitmore shop. Years later, Thomas Whitmore wrote down the truth from his prison cell in Philly, a dying confession. He said his father had been watching Mary for weeks. Father said her saintly life made her perfect, Thomas wrote in shaky handwriting. He said God told him there was a special job for us to bring real holiness to the colonies using sacred church items. As Mary walked by, Nathaniel came out of the woods holding a lantern and pretending to be worried. He said little. William had gone missing in the woods and he needed help. Mary, being kind, didn't even think twice. She agreed to help, even with the snow coming. She followed Nathaniel deeper into the land, off the road, toward a little clearing. There was a back door to the workshop hidden by pine trees. I watched from the window as Father led her inside, Thomas wrote in that old confession. Mother had set up the back room with cloths on the floor. I didn't know yet what they were planning. I was 16 and thought when they talked about making holy things, they meant symbols, not real stuff. The handwriting here got really messy. Like the writer's hand was shaking too much to write clearly. What happened in that back room wasn't written down in detail, thankfully. But what happened after was written clearly, and it was very upsetting. Mary Collins's body was carefully handled over the next 3 days. Nathaniel, who had read books from England about how to preserve things, taught his oldest son how to treat human skin. He showed him how to use salt, herbs, and other things so it wouldn't rot. Elizabeth Whitmore made little black velvet bags, each one with golden religious symbols on it. Father said we were doing God's work, Thomas wrote. He said Protestant churches in America didn't have the holy items like the Catholic Church did. He said we would give them what they needed to make worship better in the colonies. I believed him at the time. God forgive me, but I really believed him. 2 weeks after Mary Collins went missing, Nathaniel Whitmore went to Philadelphia. He took some fancy wooden boxes that he had made himself. He came back with more orders than ever and a lot of money. At the next Quaker meeting, he spoke sadly about losing our dear friend Mary. He suggested they hold a special service just for her. During the service, he gave them a beautiful altar box that he said he made for Mary. But what no one knew was that inside a secret part of that box was a little piece of Mary Collins. She was the first of what would become hundreds of holy relics sent all around the colonies. The winter of 1745 turned into spring, and then people started talking in Philadelphia. There were stories about miracles from a holy relic at a little Episcopal church in the city. The preacher there said a piece of bone from an old-time saint healed 3 sick people. He said he got the bone from a church dealer in Europe through a local craftsman. That craftsman was Nathaniel Whitmore. By 1750, the Whitmore family's business had gotten a lot bigger. Their workshop was twice as big and had 5 helpers now. These helpers made the pretty outside parts, the boxes, cups, and other items people saw. But none of them were ever allowed in the basement, where the real business happened. The family also built a new house 2 stories high, made of stone and wood. It showed just how rich they had become. People didn't talk about Mary Collins anymore. Instead, they just heard now and then about other people going missing. A preacher here, an old woman there, usually people without close family. It was easy to say they got lost while traveling or had trouble with native tribes. But something had changed in how the Whitmore family picked who to take. Mother had a thing she called discernment. Sarah Whitmore wrote in her diary in 1823. She said she could tell which people's bodies would make the strongest relics. She believed God spoke to her and told her who was meant to be a saint after death. This strange belief helped the family think of their killings not as murder, but as a holy job. They thought they were helping people reach heaven faster than normal. The Whitmores also got better at how they made and sold the relics. Nathaniel made friends with church leaders in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Virginia. He was very careful with these friendships. He gave gifts, made great church items, and shared tips. He told them the Catholic Church in Europe had kept all the sacred power to itself. Thomas's writing said, he made these Protestant preachers believe they could get power too. He told them they could get relics without turning Catholic. This worked especially well on church leaders who wanted their churches to grow. The family started using helpers. Most didn't even know what was really going on. These helpers would tell them about miracles happening in churches with Whitmore relics. Then they would share these stories with other churches, which made more people want them. Soon, the relics were so in demand that they could charge way more money. Nathaniel told the churches not to let regular people know about the relics. Only church leaders were supposed to know, to keep them special and secret. This also made them seem more important. But no one buying these relics knew they weren't old at all. The saints' relics weren't from Europe, they were made in the Whitmore basement. And they were made from the bodies of people who lived nearby. In the spring of 1753, a doctor named Dr. Samuel Winters from Lancaster started asking questions. He looked at a relic a sick person showed him, saying it had healed them. Dr. Winters checked it and said the skin looked too fresh to be so old. He also said the way it was preserved didn't match what Europe did. Before he could look into it more, Dr. Winters disappeared on the road between Lancaster and Philadelphia. No one ever found his body. But a little wooden box with what they said was a 12th century saint's fingerbone turned up in a New York church the next month. The years went by, and the same pattern kept happening. The Whitmore kids grew up and helped with the family business in different ways. Thomas, the oldest, worked closely with his dad. But William, the youngest and kind of creepy, got really good at preserving the bodies, experimenting with ways to make the relics look more real. The daughters, Mary and Sarah, handled the money stuff and the letters, keeping the family looking normal while cleaning their dirty money through real businesses. The American colonies were getting ready for revolution, and with all the political chaos, the Whitmores saw new chances to make money. Trade with England had stopped, and churches couldn't get holy items, so their workshop became one of the few good places churches could still buy from. The family made sure to seem patriotic enough, but didn't get too close to either side, staying neutral so they could keep doing business no matter who was in charge. As the Revolutionary War started wrapping up, a new creepy part of the Whitmore family's work began, one that would eventually ruin them. It was 1781, and while everyone was cheering about freedom, the Whitmores found a brand new, super profitable market for their creepy relics. After the war, churches were messed up and needed rebuilding, and people wanted spiritual meaning again after all the fighting. This brought a huge need for religious items, and the Whitmores jumped at the chance to grow their creepy business. In February 1782, the first orphan vanished from a church-run orphanage in Philadelphia. 10-year-old Joseph Miller had lost his parents to smallpox the winter before. He was small, had serious eyes, and was known for being extra holy. He led prayers with the other kids and was liked by the church staff. When he disappeared, it got checked out briefly, but they ended up saying he just ran away, which was pretty common back then in places like that. 3 months later, a church called St. Michael's in eastern Pennsylvania said some miracles were happening. They had a new relic, supposedly the preserved heart of a child saint. People prayed near it and said their prayers, especially for sick kids, were getting answered in crazy ways. More folk started coming to the church and donations poured in. Word got around, and now other churches wanted powerful relics too. William brought up the idea of using kids. Sarah Whitmore wrote in her journal with a shaky hand. The ink was smudged, maybe by tears. He said children were pure, so they made stronger relics for God's work. At first, Father didn't want to, but the money they could make changed his mind. God forgive me, I knew it was wrong. But I stayed. Quiet. After that, things got really dark in the Whitmore story. From 1782 to 1785, at least 16 kids disappeared. All of them were either orphans or very poor, and they all went missing from towns close to the Whitmore home. People were upset at first, but soon blamed the wilderness, kidnappers, or just rough colonial life. No one suspected anything more. At the same time, relics made from kids became super popular. Churches paid 5 times more for them than for adult relics, saying they were more holy and harder to find. The Whitmores got richer than ever, spending their blood money on land, businesses, and powerful friends, which helped protect them from anyone asking questions. But they needed more help now, so they let 2 trusted apprentices learn a bit about their secret. One of these men, Daniel Foster, would later be the reason everything fell apart. In the fall of 1785, a Quaker minister named Elijah Thompson was sent by the Philadelphia Yearly meeting to look into some weird religious stuff happening in small towns. Thompson had been a lawyer before becoming a Quaker, and people knew he was great at solving tricky church problems with calm words and strong beliefs. I was told to check out rumors about relics and saint worship, Thompson wrote in his journal, now kept in the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. He said that kind of stuff didn't match their simple faith. Still, some Quaker churches had gotten hold of objects that were supposed to boost spiritual experiences. Thompson started his search in Philadelphia. Right away, he noticed something weird. Many of the relics came from dealers who somehow all linked back to Nathaniel Whitmore or his helpers. He also saw that these relics had stories that sounded real, but none of them could be proven true. In December 1785, Thompson went to Chester County to meet Nathaniel face to face. His journal says Whitmore welcomed him kindly at his nice home, offered him snacks, and had a good talk about religion. When Thompson asked about the relics, Whitmore showed him the public workshop, where workers made pretty communion items and fancy decorations for churches. Whitmore talked a lot about his European contacts who supposedly sent him old relics. He even showed paperwork, but Thompson, being trained in law, noticed some things didn't add up. He left feeling uneasy, but had no proof, yet Thompson kept digging. He talked to church leaders who bought relics and made a list of the miracles people said had happened because of them. Then he saw something creepy. The biggest miracles had witnesses who were always somehow connected to the Whitmore family. I started to think the relics and the miracles were both being faked, Thompson wrote. The same people kept showing up in different towns to say miracles had happened, then they'd leave. When Thompson tracked them, their paths always led back to the Whitmore property. As Thompson dug deeper, weird things started happening. Strange things started happening to him. His stuff went missing from where he was staying. His letters didn't reach the people he sent them to. Even worse, important notes and papers he collected disappeared. They were locked in his trunk, but vanished while he slept at an inn. In February 1786, Thompson went back to Philadelphia. He was ready to share his findings with the committee. The night before his big presentation, he went to dinner. It was at the home of a respected Quaker elder. During the meal, Thompson suddenly got very sick. Doctors said he was poisoned, but didn't know how. He didn't die, but he was weak for a long time. So his investigation had to stop for a while. While he was recovering, a new person showed up. This person would help uncover the horrible truth. His name was Daniel Foster, one of the apprentices. He knew some of the family's dark secrets. He couldn't take the guilt anymore, he said. After seeing the body of a 12-year-old girl, she was from a Methodist children's home. Foster ran away from the Whitmore house at night. He took a journal where he'd written everything down. He had dates, names, and details of what he saw. He went to Philadelphia and found Elijah Thompson. After weeks of being scared, he finally told him. The Quaker minister listened while still very weak. Thompson wrote down everything Foster said. Foster shook all over as he talked. He told about a room under the workshop. It was like a butcher's place, with bodies hanging. Fluids drained into buckets placed underneath them. There were special tools to cut out bones and organs. They did it in ways that left the body mostly whole. They used salt, alcohol, and herbs to stop decay. This kept the tissue looking fresh for months or years. Foster said the family acted very calm during this. They didn't look scared or sick. They were focused. It felt like they were doing a prayer, not a crime. Nathaniel and Elizabeth Whitmore led the prayers. They thanked God for the bodies they used and asked him to bless the people who'd get the relics. Thompson now had Foster's story and his journal. He was ready to go to the authorities. But then something terrible happened. Thompson's house in Philadelphia burned down. Foster's journal was destroyed in the fire. And Foster himself went missing the next day. They never found him alive. 3 weeks later, they found some bones in the river. They knew it was Foster from the boots on the remains. But Thompson didn't give up. He kept working on the case, just more carefully. He stopped writing things down and trusted only a few people. He created secret codes and used informants to help him. Little by little, he built his case back up. By the end of 1786, he had strong connections. He linked 27 missing people to the Whitmore family. He also found 9 churches hiding real human remains, but he still didn't have the final proof, the kind that would convince powerful people to act. Then help came from a very unexpected person. Sarah Whitmore herself. The winter of 1787 was really harsh in Pennsylvania. The Whitmore house got snowed in for weeks. The family grew more tense during this time. Sarah, who had kept a secret journal, started to break down. She was 32 and still not married. Her father had turned away any men who liked her. He wanted her to stay involved in the family work. Sarah felt stuck in a nightmare she helped create. "I can't sleep anymore without seeing their faces," she wrote. "The kids haunt me the most. William isn't human anymore with how he acts. Last week, he said he wants to sell whole limbs." Mom liked the idea and quoted the Bible. She talked about holy vessels and making money. "I can't take this much longer." Sarah's guilt came at a time the family got bolder. The child relics were selling fast and brought big money. William, now 27, took over more as Nathaniel got sick. He made the relics look even more real than before. This let them charge even higher prices. He wanted to work faster and get more done. He said people were hungry for spiritual things after the war, but this meant more victims and bigger risks. William had an idea to target towns far away, places where no one would notice if someone went missing. Nathaniel, now sick, gave William full control. Thomas didn't agree, but no one listened to him. Then, in January 1788, 2 big things happened. First, William came back from a trip out west. He brought 3 dead children from a far-off town. That town had been hit hard by illness that winter. They processed the bodies so fast, it caused problems. Some of the remains had to be kept too long. They were stored in the cellar, not fully preserved yet. Second, and even more important, Sarah made a big choice. On a solo trip to Philadelphia, she made a move. She went to see Elijah Thompson in secret. Her family had been watching him for a while, but she sneaked off to meet him anyway. They talked in the back room of a bookshop. The meeting lasted more than 3 hours. Thompson kept coded notes, later translated by historians. Female W confirmed everything we feared, worse even. Families work bigger than anyone thought. At least 70 adult victims and over 20 children. She gave very detailed info on how they processed them and the way they sent out the relics, plus names of church leaders involved, are on a separate secret list. The creepiest thing? There's a basement under the main workshop filled with body parts in different stages. They even kept small preserved. Samples from every victim, like a weird kind of collection. Each one was labeled with names and dates, like some twisted filing system. Sarah said she'd help Thompson get real proof. She gave him a hand-drawn map of the whole workshop even, showing where the secret basement door was. She also told him about a special notebook that Elizabeth Whitmore kept. It had a detailed list of every body they took and every relic they sent out since they started. "I know I'm damning myself by saying this," Sarah told Thompson. "I don't expect forgiveness, not in this life or after. But I can't sleep, because I keep seeing the children's faces. I just can't let more innocent people be used for this horrible work my family's doing." Thompson knew how important Sarah's info was and how risky. So he made sure she stayed with some trusted Quaker friends instead of going back home. But that plan actually made things worse. When Sarah didn't come back, William Whitmore guessed right away she had told someone. Later, Thomas Whitmore admitted. What happened next? The family had a tense meeting when they realized Sarah had turned against them. William was furious, pacing around the study with a scary look. He started suggesting violent ways to deal with her. Father was sick and sat slumped in his chair, whispering prayers. He kept saying stuff about Judas and betrayal. Mother stayed calm, making a list of what Sarah could expose. She also listed all the things they needed to hide or destroy. "I said we should run away, just leave it all, and start over somewhere else." But William refused to give up the business he thought he was meant to lead. So they picked a two-part plan. William would go after Sarah to stop her, and Elizabeth would move all the worst evidence. She would hide it in an old mine shaft on the west side of their land. They had no idea that Thompson was already one step ahead. He was working with important Quakers who didn't trust local police. Those Quakers helped him talk to people in the new state government. By February 12, 1788, they had a full plan to raid the Whitmore home. But the night before the raid, a big snowstorm hit Chester County. Roads were bad, and it was hard to send messages. Thompson was afraid the delay would give the Whitmores time to destroy everything. So he decided to go ahead with just a small group. He left Philadelphia with 6 armed men. 2 were constables, and 4 were Quakers who wanted to help stop the horror. What happened next would haunt those men forever. They called it the Night of Unholy Discovery. February 13, 1788, came with crazy wind and snow blowing sideways. Thompson and his group reached the edge of the Whitmore land after dark. Their lanterns barely worked in the stormy night. They walked toward the workshop using Sarah's map, not the main house. "We moved like ghosts in the storm," wrote James Pearson, one of the Quaker men. "The wind helped us sneak up, but it also made it hard to hear anything." They saw lights glowing in the workshop windows, even though it was late. That was a bad sign. It looked like someone was still awake. The men split up and surrounded the building. Thompson and the constables went to the front door. The others watched to make sure no one ran away. They planned to catch everyone then. Find the secret basement Sarah had told them about. Thompson knocked hard and said he was there on official business. After a short silence, the door opened. Thomas Whitmore stood there, tall and calm in the doorway. He didn't even look surprised to see them. "His eyes looked us over like he was counting us," Pearson said. Then he stepped aside, super calm, and said, "Come in if you must." Pearson said right away it felt wrong. Thomas didn't act scared. He looked like he'd been waiting for this. Inside, everything looked normal at first. Tools on the walls, half-finished church items, the smell of wood and varnish. Thomas stood there with his hands together, answering questions with one-word replies. But his eyes kept looking at a big cabinet on the far wall. Constable William Bradford followed his gaze and went to the cabinet. It wasn't locked, and inside was a small black velvet bag. When he opened it, he found something awful. It looked like a human finger, perfectly preserved. After that, Thomas totally changed. Bradford later said Thomas dropped to his knees and Started muttering, maybe praying or confessing. They asked about the rest of the family. Thomas said his father was sick in the main house. His mother and brother William had left hours ago. They took several large trunks and headed west toward the old mine. Thompson quickly sent 2 men to try and catch them. Then he and the rest stayed to make Thomas show them the secret basement. At first, Thomas didn't want to. But then he moved a workbench, showing a trapdoor in the floor. When they opened it, a terrible smell hit them. Pearson wrote, "It felt like the stench punched us in the face. It smelled like strong chemicals and rotting flesh." Thomas lit a lantern and led them down the wooden stairs. The deeper they went, the darker it got. Pearson said, "The darkness seemed to eat the light. What we found below exceeds my ability to describe without compromising my soul's peace. Yet the truth must be recorded, no matter how awful." The underground room stretched out under the workshop and even further. It had a bunch of rooms dug into the ground, held up with wooden beams. The first room had workbenches like upstairs, but the tools there were clearly meant for cutting bodies, not wood. Glass jars of all different sizes held strange liquids. The men didn't even want to guess what those were for. A big drain in the stone floor led to channels that ran off into the walls. Everything down there was super neat and tidy, Bradford said. Notebooks with step-by-step instructions sat next to the tools. The tools were lined up by size and used. One of the notebooks was open to a page that looked freshly used. It showed drawings of body parts with some areas circled, and notes about how to preserve them. The next room showed what the Whitmores were really doing. There, hanging from metal hooks in the ceiling, were 3 bodies. 1 man, 1 woman, and 1 child, maybe around 9 or 10 years old. They'd all been cut open with scary accuracy. Their skin and organs had been treated with chemicals that made them look fake, almost like wax. But the most horrifying room was the 3rd one. Thomas called it the archive, in this quiet, empty kind of voice. All 4 walls had tall shelves filled with tiny wooden boxes. Each box had a label with a name, a date, and a location. They picked one at random, and inside was a preserved piece of a person, maybe a piece of bone, or skin, or a small organ like a stomach or a finger. It was like a creepy library, showing all the saints the Whitters had made and sold. Right in the middle of the room was a big wooden table. Sitting on top was Elizabeth Whitmore's big record book, just like Sarah had told them. Thompson wrote, "This huge book listed everything like a cold business. It had the name of every victim, how their body was handled, and where each relic was sent. Each note also said how much money the church paid and what fake story was told about where the relic came from." Thomas Whitmore, who had now pretty much given up, admitted everything. He said the family had used 79 adults and 22 children since 1745. They had sent relics to more than 40 churches across 7 states. The money they made was cleaned up by putting it into real businesses and buying land. When they asked how they chose the people they used, Thomas's answer scared everyone. "Mother had the gift," he said. "She could tell whose bodies would make powerful relics. She picked the most faithful, the innocent ones, the people whose pain made them holy. She taught William how to spot those people too. They would watch church services and revival meetings to find the right ones. They looked for people whose body parts might work miracles." The search through the basement went on for hours. The men were shaky but still tried to write everything down. Then, just before sunrise, there was loud noise upstairs. They ran back up to the main workshop. There, the 2 men sent to stop Elizabeth and William were waiting. One of them was badly hurt. He had a deep knife wound in his shoulder. William fought like a madman, the injured man said. "We found them at the mine, just like Thomas said. They were moving boxes from a wagon into the mine entrance. When we stopped them, Elizabeth tried to bribe us, offering money to stay quiet. But William snuck behind us and attacked. He cut my partner's throat before I could stop him. He's dead." The Whitmores ran into the woods, carrying whatever they could. By morning, a big manhunt had started. Messengers were sent to warn officials in nearby towns. Nathaniel Whitmore was found still at home. He was too sick to have done anything lately. He didn't fight when they arrested him. He kept going back and forth, between saying it was God's will and acting like he didn't know where he was. The search for Elizabeth and William went on for 3 days. It finally ended in the worst way. Their bodies were found in a little hunting cabin, 12 miles from home. They were laid side by side on a simple altar made from local wood. Both had swallowed poison. It looked like they had done some kind of ritual first, but no one knows exactly what. Some notes left there said they thought their deaths would bless the relics they managed to save during their escape. Thomas Whitmore was put on trial in Philadelphia. In April 1788, the trial was kept quiet because of how shocking the crimes were. He was hanged on May 7, 1788. He confessed everything, and his story matched the evidence they had found. But then came the hard part: what to do with all those human remains. Churches all over had relics made from actual people and didn't know. The leaders talked for a long time and finally decided something important. They wanted to stop people from freaking out or losing their faith. The truth was so big and terrible that they feared it might destroy the public's trust. Back then, religion was seen as the moral glue of the new country. So, after talking with church leaders, they made a serious choice. They decided this ugly story would be hidden on purpose. We must protect the believers from truths that could break their faith, wrote Judge William Bradford in a private letter to the governor. The churches didn't know what they were part of. They don't deserve shame or to lose their members. So, all the records of this investigation will be sealed for at least 100 years. Everyone involved has to swear an oath of silence. The churches that had bought the Whitmore relics were told in private. Each church got to choose. Either the human remains would be taken away quietly and buried in plain graves, with no names, or they could keep them. The church leaders to handle the matter themselves, with absolute secrecy. According to Thompson's last report, most of them chose that option. They didn't want to even involve the quiet government people. They saw it as a terrible insult to their holy places. But what the authorities didn't expect was a surprising third choice. One that shows the darkest parts of how people think and what they believe. Out of the 43 churches listed in Elizabeth Whitmore's notebook, old records show at least 17 kept the human remains. They still showed them off as holy relics, even though they now knew the truth. The reason those church leaders gave was shocking. Thompson wrote it in his last notes before they locked everything away. Some of them said, well, if miracles happened anyway, maybe God had actually blessed these poor people through their painful deaths. Others were more blunt about it. They talked about how the relics brought more donations, bigger crowds, and more respect for their churches. Giving all that up, they said, would hurt their church more than keeping the lie. Thompson, who had strong morals, thought that idea was disgusting. His last project was to make a secret list of every Whitmore victim they could identify. He wrote down where their remains were, if anyone knew. This list was sealed with the other records, with a note saying it should help people give proper respect once the truth could be shared. Whitmore property was burned down in what they officially said was an accident, but many people believed it was on purpose. They thought local officials wanted to destroy the rest of the proof. The land was taken by the state and later sold off to families who had no idea what happened there. Sarah Whitmore, who had helped reveal the crimes, got a new name and was sent to Boston. She lived under Quaker care until she died in 1823. Her journal, which she wrote in until the end, shows she was filled with guilt. But she also tried hard to help kids in need. I can't undo what my family did, she wrote in her last entry. But every child I helped get an education or a safe place to live. That's my way of fighting back against the evil we caused. I've lived 40 years trying to make things right. The scales will never be even, but I tried. I know I'll be judged soon. I don't expect mercy. I only hope the ones we hurt have found peace. The actual stuff from the Whitmore crimes, the tools, the chemicals, the machines, was said to be destroyed after the trial. But people whispered for years that some of it was saved. They said medical schools or collectors kept certain things, especially the ones William Whitmore invented. He had made some strange but effective ways to keep human bodies looking soft and alive. Doctors in the early 1800s found that really interesting. Some old books even describe similar methods, but they never say where they got the ideas. They definitely didn't admit it came from the Whitmores. The whole thing might have stayed buried forever if it weren't for a fire at a courthouse in Philadelphia in 1879. While cleaning up water-damaged files, workers grabbed some sealed packets from the 1788 case by mistake. Clerk found parts of Thomas Whitmore's confession and told his boss, who quickly locked the papers away again. But gossip started spreading in the courthouse. And soon, a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer heard about it. He dug around and wrote a big dramatic story. It had lots of mistakes, but the basic facts got out. His article came out on November 17, 1879, exactly 134 years after Mary Collins became the first victim. People freaked out at first. Then church leaders said it was fake and mean and against religion, since the reporter couldn't prove his story without the sealed records. The paper took it back after getting pressure from powerful churches. By that time, most of the churches that had kept the relics had either gotten rid of them when old pastors died, or had kept using them for so long that no one remembered where they really came from. Those body parts were now in plain graves, in private collector boxes, or still on display in church cabinets. Only a few people still knew what they really were. Then in 1923, something surprising happened. Workers fixing up the Pennsylvania Historical Society building found a hidden compartment behind a bookshelf. Inside was the full set of sealed records about the Whitmore case. Looks like Elijah Thompson himself hid them there, just in case the government records were ever lost. The head of the Historical Society knew the papers were a big deal. So, he saved them, but kept them secret. He put them under a boring title, and said only special researchers could see them. That's how historians slowly started to learn the full truth of what the Whitmores had done. What scared people the most was learning that those human relics were still out there, even in the 1900s, and maybe even now. In 1967, a quiet survey was done. It found 11 churches in the eastern U.S. that still had objects matching the ones in the Whitmore ledger. Most pastors had no idea what they were. When told the truth, some were horrified and agreed to help. Others flat out refused to believe it and didn't want to talk about it. Investigate further. The Harmony Meeting House where the Whitmores once worshipped still stands, though the church group ended in the early 1800s. The plain stone building was later used as a community hall, then a schoolhouse, before it was left empty in the 1930s. People who live nearby say they feel weird about going near it at night. Many say they get a creepy feeling just walking by. Whether that's from spooky stories or something harder to explain really depends on how you see things. Maybe the scariest part of the Whitmore story isn't the bodies they left behind, but the way their lies messed with people's minds. Thinking about how holy objects, treated with love and thought to carry God's power, could really be made from murder victims is a hard truth to face. It makes people ask painful questions about faith, about belief, and about how we sometimes fool ourselves when we really want to believe something. If you found this creepy bit of American history interesting, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Our mystery-loving community grows every day, and your support helps us keep finding these hidden horror stories. What dark secrets might be hiding in your own church's past? Let us know in the comments below. The Whitmore case also makes us face another strange truth. People really said miracles happened because of those fake relics. Some people saw visions or got healed, and they had nothing to do with the Whitmore family. They had no reason to lie. So were these just accidents and imagination? Or does strong belief make something feel real, even if it's based on something awful? The big questions go way beyond just this one case. In 1992, scientists used ground radar to scan the old Whitmore land. They found strange shapes underground like rooms and maybe a buried mine. A small dig showed that there really were hidden buildings, just like the old records said, but they didn't find any bodies. The people who owned the land got really upset and said no more digging. So the place was covered again and marked as a historic site that's not open to visitors. The last known Whitmore relic was found in 2005. It was behind the altar of a small Lutheran church in western Pennsylvania. Doing repairs found a hidden space with a velvet pouch and a letter from 1788. When the pastor learned where the object came from, he asked for DNA testing, and it turned out to be human flesh. The piece was buried in the churchyard with a small gravestone that said, "Unknown Child of God, finally at rest." As for the Whitmore family's house, the government took it and later sold it off, but nobody ever built on the part of the land where the workshop had stood. People said plants wouldn't grow there, and animals didn't like it either. Locals tell stories that on some fall nights, especially around November 17th, you can see a soft glow shaped like the old workshop. Even though no building has stood there in over 200 years, if this creepy story of murder and religion gave you chills, share it with someone who loves scary history. Hit the like button to help us keep digging into America's darkest secrets. And subscribe so you don't miss the next mystery. What spooky truths might be hiding in your town's past? Tell us your theories in the comments. What might last the longest about the Whitmore story is the way it makes us think about history itself. The fact that the government and churches hid the truth for so long shows us that powerful people can erase what really happened. They do it when something makes them look bad or threatens what people believe. It's a reminder that history isn't always the full truth, just the version that survived. The victims of the Whitmores, the holy people, who were hurt after death, and especially the children who were killed for relics, they suffered twice. First when they were murdered, then again when their names were hidden to protect big institutions. As we end this dark piece of religious history, we should remember something. Somewhere in eastern Pennsylvania, there are graves with no names, holding parts of people who never chose to be saints. Other body parts might still be in church display cases, where people pray to them not knowing where they really came from. The way the remains are split up is a sad symbol for how history gets broken. 2. Some pieces are saved. Some are hidden. The whole truth never quite comes together. So, next time you walk into an old church and see a relic behind glass, maybe you'll wonder where it really came from. And just by wondering, you'll be honoring those whose stories were almost forgotten. Because when we remember the Whitmore victims, we say clearly no reputation, no matter how holy, is worth hiding the truth, even when the truth is terrifying. This story shows how far people can go, doing evil things while pretending it's all for God. What do you think about this tale? Do you believe everything got exposed? Or are there still relics out there with secrets nobody knows? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked this story and want more creepy history, make sure to subscribe, ring the bell, and share it with someone who loves a good mystery.